What if everything you believed about getting old was wrong? That's the question Evelyn Harper found herself staring down one cold autumn evening in her small town of Cedar Grove. At 68 years old, Evelyn felt like she was fading into the background, like the soft hum of a forgotten machine slowly losing power. The world around her raced forward, children growing up, technology changing, voices getting louder, but she remained still, stuck in a loop of routine and regret. Her house, once full of laughter and light, felt like a quiet museum where memories lingered like dust on old photographs. The ticking clock on the kitchen wall seemed to mock her, counting down the days until she became truly invisible. She sat alone in her worn armchair, staring at the TV screen as a news report flickered on about the newest SpaceX mission launching with NASA's help, aiming to make deep space exploration possible. Elon Musk's voice came through the speakers, calm yet daring, speaking of pushing beyond the limits of what people thought possible. When something is important enough, Elon said, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. The words caught Evelyn's breath. For the first time in years, she felt a spark, something small but undeniable, that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. She leaned forward, eyes fixed on the screen, feeling a surge of energy that reminded her of the dreams she buried long ago. As a girl, she had gazed at the stars with wide eyes, imagining herself among them. But life had pulled her down different paths: marriage, children, work, loss. Now, she wondered if those dreams were simply waiting for her to reach back out and grab them again. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from, the reporter urged, breaking through the silence in Evelyn's living room. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Evelyn hesitated, then whispered to herself, hope. The question echoed in her mind as she turned off the TV and walked to the window. Outside, the night sky stretched wide and endless, filled with stars shining bright against the darkness. The same stars she had once dreamed of touching, the same stars she thought she had lost forever. But tonight, they called to her again. Evelyn's heart beat faster. Maybe this was the moment it all changed. Maybe age was just a number, and the real journey was only beginning. Evelyn Harper's life before that restless night was a quiet one shaped by years of routines that both comforted and confined her. She was a retired schoolteacher who had spent over 4 decades in classrooms filled with restless children and hopeful parents. Her voice had once been full of encouragement, her hands full of chalk dust and lesson plans. But now, in the silence of her small house in Cedar Grove, her hands trembled slightly as she poured tea into a chipped mug, the steam rising like faint whispers of a past she rarely revisited. She often thought about the choices she made, the paths she never took. When she was a young woman, Evelyn dreamed of flying, of exploring the stars, breaking free of the Earth's pull and venturing into the unknown. She would lie on the grass with her father on clear nights, staring at the sky, pointing out constellations and telling stories about astronauts who dared to touch the moon. Those moments had been her sanctuary, a place where she felt limitless. But life had a way of anchoring dreams to reality. She married young, raised 2 children, and poured her heart into teaching, always putting others first but quietly shelving her own hopes. The years slipped by, as they do, almost without notice, until one day she found herself alone in the house she had filled with love but that now echoed with silence. Her husband passed away 10 years ago, a sudden heart attack that left Evelyn feeling adrift. Her children, grown and busy with their own lives in far-off cities, called infrequently, their voices rushed and distracted. Loneliness had crept in like a slow fog. She missed the warmth of connection, the late-night talks, the laughter that filled rooms, the feeling of being needed. More than anything, she mourned the loss of the woman she used to be, the woman who still believed she could change the world. One afternoon, sitting by the window watching leaves fall like golden confessions, Evelyn found herself flipping through a faded photo album. There was a picture of her at 22, eyes bright with hope, standing next to her father with his arm around her shoulder. He was pointing skyward, saying, "The stars are waiting for you, Evelyn. Don't ever forget." She traced the photo with trembling fingers, feeling a pang of regret for the dreams she let slip away. Regret was a heavy burden, regret for the missed opportunities, for words left unsaid, for a life that felt more like surviving than thriving. Yet there was one memory that stood apart from the rest. It was a clear summer night, decades ago, when Evelyn's father took her outside with a homemade telescope. They spent hours looking up at the moon, tracing the craters and shadows, imagining what it would be like to walk there. That night, her father whispered something that stayed with her forever: "Age doesn't define you, Evelyn. It's what you do with the time you have." But somewhere along the way, Evelyn had forgotten his words. She let the years convince her that she was too old, too tired, too irrelevant. Her body was no longer as strong, her movements slower, and the quiet aches reminded her daily that time was marching on. Her neighbors treated her kindly but with a polite distance, as if she belonged to a different era, a fading chapter. Even the local grocery store clerk barely recognized her anymore. She felt invisible, a shadow of the vibrant woman she once was. Yet, beneath the surface of loneliness and regret, something still flickered, a faint pulse of desire to break free from the cage of age and expectation. When Evelyn saw that news report about SpaceX and NASA partnering for a deep space mission, that flicker ignited into a flame. Elon Musk became more than a billionaire entrepreneur, he became a symbol of radical possibility, of defying limits no matter how old or how daunting the challenge. His relentless pursuit of what others called impossible was a mirror reflecting a question Evelyn hadn't dared to ask herself: could she rewrite her own story? Could she, too, reach for the stars no matter where she was in life? For years, she had listened to doctors telling her to slow down, to accept the limitations of aging. Friends cautioned her to be realistic, to focus on comfort rather than risk. Even her own children doubted the value of her dreams. "Mom, maybe focus on your health, your hobbies. Don't push too hard," her daughter once said gently over the phone. But Evelyn knew deep down that comfort wasn't enough. She craved purpose. She craved meaning. That longing had become a quiet ache in her chest, a call to action she couldn't ignore. The house around her was filled with relics of a life well lived but unfulfilled in ways that mattered most to her: the journals she started and never finished, the books on astronomy gathering dust, the model rocket kits she bought for her grandchildren but never assembled. As autumn deepened outside, Evelyn began to feel a shift inside herself, subtle but unstoppable. She realized that the dreams she had thought were lost were not buried, they were waiting to be unearthed. This was the life before the shift, the life of quiet resignation that now stood on the precipice of transformation. And at the heart of that transformation was the knowledge that, like SpaceX and NASA joining forces to reach deeper into space, she could partner with her own courage and determination to reach new heights. The stars were still there, and so was the fire inside her. Evelyn knew that the path ahead wouldn't be easy. Doubt and fear would try to pull her back, and the world might still tell her she was too old. But if Elon Musk's journey taught her anything, it was that the biggest breakthroughs happen when you refuse to give up, when you believe that the impossible is just an untried possibility. On that cold evening, after turning off the TV, Evelyn took a deep breath and reached for a dusty box tucked away in the closet. Inside was her father's old telescope, a symbol of a promise made long ago and waiting to be fulfilled. She wiped the lenses carefully, the glass catching the soft glow of the lamp, and felt a strange sense of hope bloom in her chest. That night, she stepped outside into the crisp air and lifted the telescope toward the sky. The stars were brighter than she remembered, their ancient light a testament to endurance and possibility. Evelyn Harper, at 68, was no longer invisible. She was ready to begin her own mission, one step at a time. The life before the shift was ending, and a new chapter was quietly beginning. The journey to the stars was not just for astronauts or billionaires. It was for anyone brave enough to dream, to act, and to believe, no matter their age. Evelyn's newfound spark quickly met the harsh gravity of reality, pulling her back into the familiar orbit of doubt and fear. Her heart wanted to launch toward the stars, but her mind fought her every step of the way. Is it too late for me? She asked herself in the quiet moments between sleep and waking. The question echoed through her mind like a persistent shadow. She had spent years believing she was past the point of change, that her best days belonged only to memory. Her body felt fragile and her energy limited. The doctors had warned her repeatedly to slow down, to take it easy, to accept the natural decline that comes with age. You need to listen to your body, her physician had said just weeks earlier, his voice gentle but firm. You're not a young woman anymore. Those words hit her harder than any blow. She wondered if her dreams were just fool's errands, fleeting sparks bound to be extinguished by the cold winds of time. Worse yet was the silent dismissal from those closest to her. Her children, though loving in their own way, had little patience for what they saw as a midlife crisis. "Mom, we worry about you pushing yourself too hard," her daughter said during a brief phone call, her tone filled with concern that felt more like constraint. "Maybe focus on enjoying the time you have." Her son, once curious and supportive, was increasingly distant. His skepticism stung more than she expected. Why dig up old dreams that didn't work out? "Isn't it time to accept things?" he asked, his voice a mix of frustration and pity. Even neighbors and friends treated her ambitions like an oddity, a harmless eccentricity best smiled at and ignored. Evelyn felt herself shrinking under the weight of these judgments, her fire dimming. But somewhere deep inside, a defiant voice refused to be silenced. She recalled a moment she heard on a podcast, Elon Musk's voice cutting through the noise with his relentless drive and refusal to accept limits. "When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor." That sentence became a lifeline, a mantra she repeated in moments of weakness. The more she listened, the more she realized that the battle wasn't just with others, it was the war raging inside her own heart and mind. She wrestled with fear, fear of failure, fear of ridicule, fear of physical limitation. She fought the temptation to retreat into the safety of what she knew, the predictable patterns that had defined her life for decades. Each morning she woke to a tug-of-war between hope and resignation. One day, she would feel ready to reach for the stars, the next, the weight of age pressed her back into shadows. It was exhausting. Evelyn's home, once a place of comfort, now felt like a battleground for this inner war. The silence around her became a mirror for the doubts swirling inside. At times, she would stand by the window, watching neighbors rush by, their lives seemingly full of purpose and connection. She longed to be part of that vitality again but wasn't sure how. In her darkest moments, she questioned if anyone really cared anymore. Did her dreams matter? Did her existence still hold meaning beyond the fading roles of mother and widow? The societal dismissal of older people as irrelevant gnawed at her soul. She remembered overhearing a conversation at the grocery store, where a younger woman casually remarked, "People like her are just stuck in the past." The words stung like cold rain. Yet in that same moment, a quiet rebellion began to rise within Evelyn. She refused to be defined by age or by the narrow expectations others held for her. She thought about Elon Musk again, not as a savior but as a symbol of radical possibility. His life was a testament to pushing boundaries, to embracing risk and failure as part of the journey. If he could challenge the limits of space exploration, why couldn't she challenge the limits imposed by time and society? This inner war, the clash of doubt and hope, fear and courage, became the crucible where her transformation would be forged. Evelyn knew the path forward wouldn't be smooth or easy. There would be setbacks, skepticism, and moments when she would want to give up. But the alternative, living a life defined by fear and invisibility, was no longer acceptable. Slowly, she began to build small defenses against the negativity. She unfollowed social media accounts that made her feel old and irrelevant, replacing them with podcasts and blogs about space exploration and innovation. She started keeping a journal, not just of her thoughts and fears but of her dreams and small victories. The pages became a battlefield and a sanctuary where she could wrestle with her inner war honestly. At night, she listened to Elon Musk interviews over and over, drinking in his relentless energy, his refusal to accept the status quo. Some people don't like change, he said once, but you need to embrace it if you want to make progress. Evelyn took those words like a shield. One afternoon, her son stopped by unexpectedly. She could see the hesitation in his eyes, the struggle between his desire to support her and his doubts. They talked cautiously at first, the conversation stumbling over past misunderstandings and silences. Then, unexpectedly, he asked about the telescope she had taken out of storage. She hesitated but shared her dream, her fear, and her desire to reconnect with a part of herself that felt lost. For a moment, the skepticism in his eyes softened into something like understanding. He didn't promise to be fully on board, but he didn't shut her down either. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Evelyn realized that the inner war wasn't just about silencing doubt but learning to live with it, to hold hope alongside fear. She would have days when the doubts roared louder, and days when hope blazed bright. The key was to keep moving forward despite the uncertainty. The days grew shorter and colder, but Evelyn found herself stepping outside each evening, telescope in hand, seeking the stars that once seemed so far away. Sometimes, she couldn't find the constellations she knew so well as a child, hidden behind clouds or city lights. But other nights, the sky opened up in breathtaking clarity, and she felt a profound connection to something bigger than herself. She wasn't just looking at stars, she was looking at possibility. This inner war was no longer a prison but a crucible. Through the struggle, Evelyn Harper was becoming someone new, someone willing to fight for a future she had long believed was out of reach. The moment it all changed was not a sudden explosion but a slow burn, a persistent flame growing stronger with each act of courage. She began to understand that age wasn't a wall but a horizon, something to approach, to cross, to explore. Elon Musk's example was never about perfection or guarantees, it was about daring to try. That was the real lesson she needed to learn. Evelyn's inner war was far from over, but with each passing day, she was winning more battles. The war within had become a journey of rediscovery, a battle to reclaim her own story and rewrite it with courage and purpose. As the night sky stretched above her, endless and full of promise, Evelyn felt a quiet certainty. She was ready to fight, not just against the world's expectations, but against the doubts within herself. The stars were calling, and this time, she was listening. That night, after the long battle in her mind, Evelyn made a decision that felt like the first breath after holding it underwater for too long. She decided to do one thing, just one small, bold step, that would signal the start of her new mission. It wasn't a rocket launch or a groundbreaking invention. It was simpler, quieter, yet powerful enough to shake loose the chains of inertia that had held her in place for years. She decided to walk. Not just inside her house, pacing anxiously, but outside, under the vast sky where her dreams once soared. The very next morning, with a reluctant resolve, Evelyn pulled on her worn sneakers, wrapped a scarf around her neck, and stepped outside into the crisp autumn air. The leaves crunched beneath her feet like the soundtrack to a new beginning. At first, the walk was slow and awkward. Her legs ached from disuse, her breath came in shallow bursts, and the cold made her fingers stiff. But with each step, she felt something shift, a stirring of strength, a flicker of hope that this small action was more than just exercise. It was a declaration. She was moving forward. After a week of daily walks, Evelyn found herself lingering longer outside at night, setting up her father's old telescope in the backyard. The stars, once distant and unreachable, now felt like companions on this journey. She began keeping a journal again, writing down her thoughts, her fears, and the new light kindling in her heart. One step at a time, she wrote, quoting Elon Musk's mantra she'd heard on a podcast. Even a journey to Mars starts with a single step. She started sharing her experience online, posting simple updates on a blog she named, Starbound at 68. At first, only a few friends and distant relatives followed her posts, but slowly, others found her words, people like her, who felt overlooked, who feared it was too late to change. They wrote back, sharing their own stories, their own hopes. For Evelyn, this connection was a lifeline, proof she was not alone. Her neighbors noticed the change, too. Mrs. Thompson from down the street smiled more when they passed, and even the local coffee shop owner greeted her with a nod of respect. It was as if her small steps had made her visible again. The hardest part was telling her children. Her daughter's reaction was cautious but not dismissive. "I'm glad you're doing something you love," she said, though there was still worry in her voice. Her son was quieter, still unsure, but Evelyn didn't expect immediate support. The point was that she had started, on her terms. One afternoon, Evelyn attended a local astronomy club meeting, a group she had always wanted to join but never had the courage to approach. She carried her journal and telescope, feeling the familiar butterflies of nervousness mixed with excitement. The members welcomed her warmly, their enthusiasm infectious. She listened as they spoke about upcoming meteor showers and telescope tips, feeling for the first time in years like she belonged to something bigger than herself. That night, walking home beneath the starlit sky, Evelyn felt tears of joy prick her eyes. This was what she needed, a spark, a community, a reason to keep going. Inspired by Elon Musk's relentless optimism and his refusal to accept limitations, Evelyn took on a small project. She began building a model rocket in her garage, one she could assemble with her grandchildren the next time they visited. It was simple, but to Evelyn, it symbolized something greater, the act of creation, the courage to dream again, and the promise of new adventures. Each piece she fitted together was a stitch in the fabric of her new life, a step toward reclaiming the joy and purpose that had slipped away. The work was slow and imperfect, but it was hers. One evening, as she adjusted the model rocket under the flickering light of the garage, a thought settled deep in her heart: she was no longer waiting for permission to matter. She was granting it to herself. Yet, the journey was not without resistance. Some days, the old doubts would sneak back in, whispering that she was foolhardy or selfish. She caught herself wondering if the world really cared about a 68-year-old woman's space dreams. But then she would remember Elon Musk's words, the thousands of miles his rockets traveled despite skepticism and failure. Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough, he said once. That became her anthem: to fail, to stumble, but to never stop moving. The small community she built through her blog and astronomy club grew. She received emails from people across the country sharing how her story inspired them to pursue their own impossible goals. A local journalist reached out to feature her journey, and soon Evelyn found herself at the center of a story about resilience, age, and dreaming big. The article brought calls from old friends she hadn't spoken to in years and even messages from distant relatives curious about her newfound passion. The flood of connection was overwhelming and beautiful. Most importantly, her son called more often. He sent a message one day that simply said, "Proud of you, Mom." That one sentence made every struggle, every doubt, every step worth it. Evelyn realized the one thing she changed wasn't just her daily walk or her hobby, it was the way she saw herself. She stopped being her own harshest critic and became her own biggest cheerleader. The mission was no longer just about reaching the stars, it was about rediscovering the person she was meant to be all along. As autumn deepened into winter, Evelyn stood once more in her backyard, telescope pointed at the glittering night sky. The stars seemed to shine just for her, a cosmic audience cheering on her quiet revolution. She smiled, knowing the journey ahead was long and uncertain, but no longer frightening. She had taken the first step. The journey of a lifetime was underway. The morning sunlight streamed through the curtains as Evelyn Harper sat at her kitchen table, staring at her laptop screen. The quiet hum of the house was interrupted only by the occasional creak of the floorboards and the soft tapping of her fingers on the keyboard. For weeks, she had been pouring her heart into her blog, sharing her journey, the struggles, the small victories, the restless nights spent staring at the stars. Today, something felt different. She had just clicked publish on a new post titled "Dreams Don't Expire," a raw, honest recounting of her battles with doubt and the unexpected power of hope. She didn't expect much. Just a few likes from friends, maybe a comment or two. But within hours, the post took on a life of its own. Notifications popped up like fireworks, comments from strangers who said her story moved them, inspired them, reminded them that it was never too late. One message stood out. A woman from Kansas wrote, "Reading your words made me pick up my paintbrush again after 20 years. Thank you for reminding me to believe." Another came from a man in Florida, "I'm 72 and just signed up for my first computer class because of you. It's never too late." Evelyn felt a swelling in her chest, a mixture of disbelief and pride. Her story was no longer just hers, it had become a beacon for others, a symbol of transformation against the tide of invisibility. As the day wore on, the messages kept coming. The blog's readership exploded overnight. Local news caught wind, and soon a reporter called, asking to interview her about the journey that had captured the hearts of so many. Evelyn, nervous but determined, agreed. When the camera crew arrived, she welcomed them into her small home, the same home that just months ago had felt like a cage of regret and loneliness. Sitting by the window where the afternoon light bathed her face, Evelyn shared her story with honesty and vulnerability. She talked about the pain of feeling forgotten, the fear of being too old to change, and the unexpected courage she found by looking to someone like Elon Musk, not as a hero, but as a reminder that age is never a barrier to bold dreams. The interview aired on the local evening news, and the response was overwhelming. Calls and emails poured in from viewers, neighbors, and distant strangers moved by her courage. Even her children, watching on separate screens, began to see her in a new light, not just as their mother but as a woman reclaiming her life. That night, Evelyn received a call that shook her deeply. It was from her daughter. "Mom," she said, voice thick with emotion, "I'm sorry if I ever made you feel like your dreams were too much. I see you now, really see you." Tears blurred Evelyn's vision as she listened. "I want to be part of this, Mom. Let me help." It was a breakthrough not just in her public life, but in the fragile, complex relationships that had defined her private world for years. The next weeks were a whirlwind of growth and change. Evelyn's blog posts became more frequent and vibrant. She shared videos of her small rocket building project, tutorials on using the telescope, and reflections on what it meant to defy expectations. Her story caught the attention of a nonprofit focused on lifelong learning and empowerment. They invited her to speak at events and workshops, where she met others who had felt the sting of invisibility and the exhilaration of rediscovery. Each event was a stage where Evelyn stepped out of the shadows and into her own light. Yet the breakthrough was not just external, it was deeply personal. One evening, after a workshop, Evelyn sat alone in her backyard with the telescope pointed at the moon. The cool night air wrapped around her like a comforting blanket. She thought about the years lost to fear and doubt, the time spent shrinking herself to fit others' expectations. But more than that, she felt gratitude. For the fight she had waged inside, for the spark Elon Musk's example had ignited within her, for the community that had embraced her story. Her journal was filled with notes from this new chapter: "I am more than my age. I am a creator. I am a dreamer." It was in that quiet moment, beneath the vast expanse of space she had always admired from afar, that Evelyn understood the true meaning of breaking through. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about breaking through the prison of self-doubt, societal dismissal, and isolation. It was about reclaiming her place in the world. Just as SpaceX and NASA had joined forces to push the boundaries of exploration, Evelyn had joined forces with her own courage and resilience to push the boundaries of her life. One night, as she prepared for bed, her phone buzzed with a message that made her heart leap. It was from her son, who rarely reached out. "Mom, I want to talk. Maybe even visit soon." The walls she thought were permanent cracks began to mend. She was no longer invisible to the people who mattered most. Her story was breaking through the silence that had once defined her days. Months passed, and with every passing day, Evelyn felt the transformation deepen. She no longer woke up to dread or despair but to possibility and purpose. The telescope, the blog, the rocket project, all were symbols of a life reborn. She still walked every morning, sometimes joined by neighbors or friends she met through her new community. Together, they shared stories, dreams, and laughter under the same sky that had once felt so distant. Evelyn often thought about Elon Musk, not just for his achievements but for his mindset. The willingness to fail, to try again, to dream bigger than fear allowed. She realized her own journey was a testament to that spirit. The breakthrough was not the end, it was a beginning, a launching pad for whatever came next. The stars were no longer just distant lights, they were invitations. Invitations to live boldly, to connect deeply, and to continue reaching upward and outward, no matter the obstacles. Evelyn Harper had broken through the walls of age, doubt, and invisibility. She was, at last, flying toward her own impossible frontier. The air smelled of pine and earth as Evelyn stood outside her home on a crisp spring morning, the kind of morning that whispered of fresh beginnings and untold possibilities. She watched the sun spill gold across the sky, lighting the garden she had tended with renewed energy, each budding flower a testament to her rebirth. The last year had been a whirlwind of change, some days exhilarating, others exhausting, but every moment had shaped her into someone she barely recognized yet deeply admired. She wasn't the woman who had sat alone, doubting her worth, waiting for permission to matter. She had become the author of her own story, a beacon of courage for those who felt forgotten. Evelyn's thoughts drifted to the people who had journeyed alongside her. The strangers who had become friends through her blog, the neighbors who now greeted her with warmth and curiosity, her children who were slowly opening their hearts and minds to the woman she had always been beneath the surface. It was a mosaic of connection, fragile but growing, pieced together from moments of honesty, vulnerability, and relentless hope. Her telescope stood nearby, gleaming under the early sun, a symbol of her endless curiosity and the vast horizons she still sought to explore. She remembered the first night she had dragged it out into the cold backyard, fingers stiff with the chill, heart pounding with fear and excitement. That night had sparked the journey that transformed her life. Evelyn realized that her new legacy wasn't about fame or accolades, it was about action, about the quiet power of one person daring to change, even when the world expected her to fade away. It was about showing up for herself and others, about weaving purpose into the fabric of everyday life. Sitting down at her kitchen table, Evelyn opened her journal, its pages filled with reflections, dreams, and lessons learned. She wrote, "I thought this was the end. But it was only the beginning. I am not too old. I am not invisible. I am enough." These words felt like a declaration, not just to herself, but to anyone who might read them someday, anyone who might need permission to matter again. The phone rang, pulling her from her reverie. It was her son, his voice warmer than ever before. "Mom, I'm coming over this weekend. Maybe we can work on the rocket together." She smiled, a quiet joy settling in her chest. Those simple words felt like a bridge repaired, a wound healing. She was reconnecting not only with her dreams but with the people who mattered most. Later that day, Evelyn received an invitation to speak at a community center about her journey, how she had turned fear into fuel, invisibility into impact. Standing in front of a room full of faces, many lined with the same doubts and worries she once carried, she shared her story with honesty and hope. She spoke about Elon Musk, not as a distant figure of genius but as a symbol of relentless possibility, of refusing to accept limits imposed by age, failure, or fear. Her words sparked something in the room, a spark that spread like wildfire through conversations, smiles, and newfound determination. Evelyn watched as people nodded, tears glistened, and hands reached out for connection. She realized then that her legacy was already unfolding, not in grand monuments but in small acts of courage multiplied across lives. Her story had become a ripple, reaching far beyond her backyard or blog. It was a reminder that life, even in its later chapters, was full of possibility. One afternoon, as she sat quietly in her garden, a letter arrived, an unexpected invitation from a local school to speak to students about the power of perseverance and dreaming big, regardless of age. Evelyn felt a thrill of nervous excitement. Speaking to young people about space, science, and the courage to defy limits was a way to pass on the legacy she wished to leave behind. She imagined the faces of the students, wide-eyed and curious, and felt a deep sense of responsibility and joy. The next week, standing before a room filled with eager young minds, Evelyn shared not only facts about the stars but the story of her own journey, from fear and doubt to hope and action. She spoke about the power of dreaming beyond society's expectations and the importance of resilience. Her words resonated deeply, sparking questions and conversations that lingered long after the final bell. That night, Evelyn sat beneath the sky once more, the stars a silent audience to her thoughts. She realized that legacy wasn't something to be chased or demanded, it was something created through daily choices, through courage, connection, and the willingness to keep reaching despite fear. Her journey had taught her that life didn't have an expiration date for purpose or passion. She had learned to embrace change, not as a threat but as a companion. Evelyn's thoughts returned to Elon Musk, his fearless pursuit of the impossible, his refusal to settle for the status quo. He had shown her that boundaries were meant to be tested and that the greatest adventures often began with a single, uncertain step. She felt grateful that his example had reached her at the moment she needed it most. As spring turned to summer, Evelyn's days were filled with purpose and connection. She continued to write, to explore the stars, to build with her grandchildren. Her home was no longer a place of quiet despair but a hub of laughter, dreams, and renewed love. The fractures in her relationships were healing, not perfectly, but with effort and grace. And in the quiet moments, when she gazed at the night sky, she felt a profound peace, a knowing that she was exactly where she was meant to be, living fully, boldly, and without apology. Evelyn Harper's new legacy was not written in the stars alone but in the hearts of everyone she touched. It was a legacy of courage, hope, and the unwavering belief that it is never too late to matter, to change, to love, to dream. She had found her way back from the edge of invisibility into the light, and in doing so, had become a guiding star for others still searching. "I was never too old," she wrote one last time in her journal, "I was just waiting for permission to matter again. Now I give that permission to myself, and to you." And with that, Evelyn looked up at the sky, ready to continue her journey among the stars. Evelyn stood at the threshold of her front door, the morning sun casting long shadows across the sidewalk and lighting the familiar streets of her small town with a golden glow that promised fresh starts. Today wasn't just another day, it was a new horizon. She felt it in the way her chest expanded with anticipation, the kind that had once belonged only to young dreamers with nothing but the sky to chase. The past months had been a whirlwind, each step pushing her further from the shadows of doubt and closer to the person she had always imagined she could become. Yet, as she prepared to leave for a conference on space exploration and lifelong learning in a nearby city, she sensed this moment was different. It wasn't just about the event or the people she would meet, it was about crossing a threshold she hadn't dared approach before. Evelyn had never been comfortable with crowds or new places. Her life had been a slow retreat into comfort zones and predictable routines. But now, driven by a purpose that burned brighter than fear, she was stepping boldly into the unknown. The car ride to the conference was filled with the hum of anticipation and quiet reflections. She gazed out the window as the familiar landscape gave way to unfamiliar streets and bustling cityscapes. The towering buildings and the rush of people reminded her of the vastness of the world beyond her small town. A world she was eager to explore. When she arrived, Evelyn was greeted by a diverse crowd, scientists, educators, enthusiasts young and old, all united by a shared fascination with the cosmos and the promise of discovery. Among them, she recognized faces from her blog community and even a few local reporters who had covered her story. The warmth of their smiles made the overwhelming space feel smaller, more like a gathering of kindred spirits than strangers. The keynote speaker was an astrophysicist who spoke passionately about humanity's next steps into deep space exploration, the collaboration between private companies like SpaceX and government agencies like NASA, the challenges of reaching Mars and beyond, and the importance of innovation fueled by diverse voices and perspectives. Evelyn listened intently, every word resonating with the echoes of her own journey. It struck her how the exploration of space mirrored her personal voyage. From fear and isolation to hope and connection, from limitations to possibilities. After the talk, Evelyn found herself in a circle of conversation, sharing her story and hearing others. She spoke about her late start, the battles with doubt, and the inspiration she found in Elon Musk's fearless approach to failure and innovation. The group responded with encouragement and shared their own stories of transformation, creating a web of support and understanding that felt like a second home. The conference also included hands-on workshops and panels focused on lifelong learning and community engagement. Evelyn eagerly joined sessions on using technology to connect with others, storytelling to inspire change, and practical ways to stay curious and active at any age. She discovered tools that made sharing her blog easier and learned about local programs she could join to expand her impact. One afternoon, Evelyn attended a session about intergenerational collaboration in science and education. The idea that young and old could come together, blending experience with fresh ideas, struck a deep chord. She thought of her grandchildren, the moments spent teaching them about stars and rockets, and the possibilities of building bridges between generations to ignite passion and knowledge. By the end of the conference, Evelyn felt energized and empowered. She wasn't just a spectator in the story of space exploration, she was part of the community propelling humanity forward, no matter her age or background. On the drive home, her mind raced with plans, starting a local astronomy club for seniors and children, collaborating with schools to create workshops, expanding her blog into a podcast to reach more listeners hungry for inspiration. Back in her small town, Evelyn's renewed energy rippled through her daily life. She transformed her garage into a mini workshop where she could build and tinker with model rockets, encouraging her grandchildren to join her on weekends. The sound of laughter and conversation filled the space that once echoed with silence. Her blog blossomed into a multimedia platform, sharing videos, interviews, and stories from her new community. Each post carried the same message: it's never too late to dream, to learn, to change. Evelyn's newfound purpose gave her a sense of vitality that surprised even her. Neighbors stopped by to ask about the rockets, the blog, or just to say hello. Her children, seeing the light in their mother's eyes, grew more involved, helping with projects and offering support. The old wounds of estrangement softened with time and shared experiences. One crisp evening, Evelyn sat in her backyard with her telescope, surrounded by family and friends. They watched a meteor shower streak across the night sky, the moments glowing bright and fleeting. She shared stories of constellations and distant worlds, weaving science with the wonder of imagination. Her heart swelled with gratitude. She had crossed a new horizon, not just in her life but in the lives of those she touched. The journey that began with a single step had become a voyage of connection, purpose, and endless possibility. Evelyn understood now that life's horizons were not fixed, they moved with her, expanding as far as her courage and dreams could reach. Like the rockets she admired, she was launched not by youth alone, but by passion, resilience, and the refusal to accept limits. As the stars sparkled overhead, Evelyn whispered a quiet thanks, to the universe, to Elon Musk's fearless example, and most of all, to herself. She was ready for whatever came next. The sky was no longer the limit, it was just the beginning. Evelyn's days had grown richer and more vibrant, yet there remained an unmistakable thrill in stepping into uncharted territory. The conference, the workshops, the community gatherings, they were all markers along a path that was expanding faster than she ever imagined possible. But with each new step, a familiar tremor of uncertainty surfaced, a quiet whisper of doubt that asked, "Can you really keep doing this? Are you ready for what comes next?" One chilly morning, as frost kissed the edges of her garden and the sun was just beginning to push away the night, Evelyn stood by her garage-turned-workshop, eyes tracing the lines of the model rocket she was assembling with meticulous care. The smell of metal and paint mingled with the crisp air, grounding her in the present. She thought about how far she had come, from hiding in the shadows of regret and fear to standing on the edge of possibility, crafting dreams with her own hands. But now, she was confronting a new kind of unknown. The rocket was small, a humble model, but it symbolized something much larger, her willingness to embrace uncertainty, to build and launch something that might fail or soar. It was a test of faith in herself and the process of change. That day, Evelyn received an unexpected invitation to collaborate with a local science center on a project designed to engage seniors and youth in hands-on learning about space exploration. The project's goal was to inspire curiosity, creativity, and connection across generations, exactly the mission Evelyn had begun to embrace. The invitation thrilled her but also stirred nerves. She questioned her skills, her relevance, the strength of her voice among scientists and educators. Could she contribute meaningfully? Would others take her seriously? In moments like these, she thought of Elon Musk, not as a flawless genius but as a symbol of fearless curiosity and resilience. She remembered his words about failure being a necessary step to success, about pushing boundaries even when the outcome was uncertain. That mindset became her anchor. Evelyn accepted the invitation, determined to bring her unique experience and passion to the table. As she began working with the Science Center team, she was surprised by how much she learned and contributed. Her life experience lent perspective and empathy, helping to shape programs that were inclusive and engaging. She found joy in brainstorming with younger colleagues, sharing stories that bridged generations, and witnessing the spark of wonder ignite in participants' eyes. The project grew into a series of workshops held every Saturday, where seniors and children gathered to build rockets, learn about astronomy, and share their dreams. Evelyn became a mentor, a guide, and sometimes the storyteller who wove lessons of perseverance into the fabric of their activities. The laughter, the questions, the occasional frustration, each moment was a testament to the power of embracing the unknown. But embracing uncertainty also meant facing setbacks. One afternoon, a rocket launch failed spectacularly, the model tumbling sideways and crashing before it could clear the trees. The children's faces fell, and even Evelyn felt the sting of disappointment. Yet instead of despair, she saw an opportunity. She gathered the group and spoke candidly about failure, how every success was built on attempts that didn't go as planned. She shared Elon Musk's relentless drive, the countless failures behind his achievements, and the importance of seeing each setback as a step forward. The mood shifted from gloom to determination. They fixed the rocket, learned from mistakes, and launched again with renewed hope. That day, Evelyn witnessed a transformation not only in the children but in herself. The unknown was not a threat but a landscape of growth. Outside the workshops, Evelyn's personal life continued to evolve. Her relationship with her children deepened, marked by more frequent visits, shared projects, and heartfelt conversations that had once seemed impossible. She felt a newfound sense of belonging and acceptance, not only from others but within herself. This inner peace allowed her to take risks she might have avoided before, public speaking engagements, interviews, and community leadership roles. She became a voice for aging with purpose, challenging stereotypes, and inspiring others to embrace change boldly. One evening, as she prepared for a talk at the local library, Evelyn stood before a mirror and practiced her speech. The woman looking back was no longer the fearful, hesitant soul who had doubted her worth. She was a beacon of resilience, a living example of transformation. The mirror reflected not just a face but a legacy in progress. Her speech that night was met with standing ovations and tears from the audience. Many shared their own stories afterward, thanking her for lighting the way. Evelyn realized her impact was multiplying, one story, one connection at a time. Yet, despite the successes, she knew the journey was ongoing. Embracing the unknown meant never settling, always reaching beyond comfort. It was a commitment to growth, vulnerability, and the courage to face whatever came next. In quiet moments, she gazed at the stars, feeling the vastness of space echo her own limitless potential. She thought about humanity's journey into the cosmos, the risks, the failures, the breakthroughs, and saw her own path reflected there. Like the explorers pushing beyond Earth's bounds, Evelyn was navigating the infinite terrain of personal transformation. One crisp autumn afternoon, Evelyn received a letter from a foundation dedicated to promoting lifelong learning and innovation. They invited her to join a panel discussion at a national conference, where she would share her story alongside scientists, entrepreneurs, and advocates for aging empowerment. The invitation was a testament to how far she had come, but also a challenge to step even further into the spotlight. Evelyn felt the familiar flutter of nerves but also a steady flame of resolve. She accepted, knowing this was another horizon to cross. Preparing for the conference, she reached out to her growing network for support and advice. She practiced her talk, weaving stories of courage, failure, and hope with the science and vision that had come to define her journey. On the day of the panel, Evelyn stepped onto the stage before a packed auditorium. The spotlight was bright, the faces expectant. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak, not just as a 67-year-old woman who had rediscovered purpose, but as a representative of countless others who refused to be defined by age or fear. She shared her story candidly, the moments of doubt and breakthrough, the inspiration drawn from Elon Musk's example, and the belief that embracing the unknown was the key to living fully. The audience listened, rapt and moved. Afterward, attendees approached her with tears, hugs, and words of gratitude. Evelyn realized that by embracing uncertainty, she had become a lighthouse for others lost in their own storms. Returning home, Evelyn sat by her window, the night sky twinkling with distant stars. She reflected on the path she had traveled, from isolation and despair to connection and courage. Embracing the unknown was no longer a daunting challenge but a way of life, a daily invitation to grow, learn, and inspire. Her legacy was unfolding in real time, not just in achievements but in the hearts and minds she touched. With a smile, Evelyn whispered a promise to herself, to keep stepping forward, to keep dreaming beyond limits, and to keep embracing the unknown with open arms. The universe was vast and mysterious, but so was she. And in that shared mystery, she found boundless hope. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The hum of the small community center buzzed softly in the background as Evelyn arranged chairs for another workshop. It was early morning, the kind of stillness just before a day full of possibilities. Her hands moved with practiced care, the lingering stiffness of age softened by the warmth of purpose. Today was special. It wasn't just another gathering, it was the day she had invited a guest speaker, a young engineer working with SpaceX, to share insights about rocket technology and deep space exploration. Evelyn's heart fluttered with excitement and nerves. She remembered the days when she had believed her best years were behind her, when her dreams felt like distant stars unreachable from the quiet corners of her small town. Now, that spark inside her was no longer a flicker but a blaze, fueled by community, learning, and the fearless example of Elon Musk. As the room filled, Evelyn greeted the diverse faces. Children clutching notebooks, seniors leaning on canes but eager to listen, parents curious about the future their kids might inherit. She felt a surge of gratitude. This was the moment she had worked toward, bridging generations through shared wonder and ambition. The guest speaker, a bright-eyed engineer named Marcus, began with a story about the first time he saw a rocket launch as a child. His voice carried the same wonder that Evelyn remembered from her own youth, the sense that the impossible was simply waiting to be conquered. He spoke about the collaboration between SpaceX and NASA, their ambitious missions to Mars, the challenges of engineering spacecraft capable of surviving deep space, and the human spirit driving it all forward. Evelyn listened, enraptured. The technical jargon faded into the background as the core message shone through: innovation thrived on courage, persistence, and the willingness to push beyond comfort. After the talk, the room erupted in questions, conversations bubbling with curiosity and excitement. Evelyn noticed a young boy, maybe 10 years old, eyes wide as he asked Marcus about the possibility of humans living on Mars. The boy's enthusiasm was contagious, reminding Evelyn of the dreamers she had once been surrounded by in her blog community and the workshops she led. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Evelyn stayed behind to speak with Marcus. They discussed everything from rocket design to the importance of mentorship and community support. Marcus expressed admiration for her dedication and vision, calling her a trailblazer, who was proving that age was no barrier to dreaming big. Evelyn smiled, feeling a swell of pride and purpose. That evening, as she sat in her quiet living room, Evelyn reflected on the day. The spark ignited in her heart had become a flame, warming not just herself but the entire community around her. She thought about the countless people still stuck in doubt and fear, wondering if they could ever reignite their own spark. She knew the answer was yes. It was never about age or circumstance, it was about daring to believe in possibility again. The next morning brought an unexpected surprise. Evelyn's phone buzzed with notifications. Her blog post recounting the workshop and the visit from Marcus had been shared widely, reaching thousands beyond her town. Messages poured in. Thank yous, stories of inspiration, and offers to collaborate. Among the responses was a note from a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting older adults in science and technology fields. They invited Evelyn to join an advisory board aimed at creating more inclusive educational opportunities. The invitation felt like a new door opening, one she hadn't even dared to knock on before. Accepting it, Evelyn stepped into a role that expanded her impact beyond the local level. Through virtual meetings and collaborations, she connected with like-minded individuals across the country, all committed to breaking down barriers and celebrating lifelong learning. The experience challenged her to grow, to learn new skills, and to advocate fiercely for change. Months passed, and Evelyn's initiatives flourished. Her community workshops inspired neighboring towns to start similar programs. Her blog transformed into a multimedia platform featuring interviews, tutorials, and stories from diverse voices, seniors, children, scientists, and dreamers united by a shared passion for space and discovery. One crisp fall afternoon, Evelyn received a letter from NASA, inviting her to attend a public event celebrating the launch of a new mission to the Moon. The invitation acknowledged her contributions to community engagement and lifelong learning. Standing in line at the event, surrounded by scientists, engineers, and fellow enthusiasts, Evelyn felt a profound sense of belonging. This was the world she had once only observed from afar, the world of exploration, innovation, and endless curiosity. Watching the rocket lift off into the clear blue sky, Evelyn's heart soared with it. The roar of the engines echoed the beating of her own spirit, a relentless drive to reach higher, to explore deeper, to live fully. She thought about Elon Musk's words. When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. That night, back home under a canopy of stars, Evelyn penned a message to her blog readers: the spark is inside each of us, waiting to ignite. Age, fear, or past mistakes don't define our capacity to dream or to change. Let this be your invitation to light your own fire. Her words rippled across the community, sparking conversations and connections that spread hope and courage. Evelyn knew her journey was far from over. The spark that had once felt so fragile was now a steady flame, illuminating paths for herself and others. She had become a living testament to the power of resilience, curiosity, and the refusal to accept limits. And as the night sky stretched endlessly above, she looked up with the confidence of someone who had found not just a new horizon but a whole universe of possibilities waiting to be explored. The days grew shorter and the crisp bite of autumn settled firmly into the town. Leaves turned fiery hues of red and gold, swirling in the cool breeze that whispered of change. Evelyn found herself standing at the edge of another threshold, one that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. After months of growth, community involvement, and public speaking, she had been invited to participate in a regional summit on aging, technology, and innovation, a gathering that brought together experts, policymakers, and everyday heroes redefining what it meant to grow older in the 21st century. As she prepared for the trip to the city, Evelyn reflected on how far she'd come from the quiet woman who once felt invisible and too old to matter. Now, she was stepping onto a stage where her voice would be heard among some of the most influential minds of the day. But with that opportunity came a familiar question gnawing at her mind: did she truly belong? The morning of the summit dawned cold and clear. Evelyn dressed carefully, choosing a simple yet elegant outfit that made her feel confident. In the mirror, she saw the woman she had become, resilient, curious, and unafraid to push boundaries. The ride to the city was a quiet journey through bustling streets and towering skyscrapers, a stark contrast to the small-town life she'd always known. The conference center buzzed with energy as participants from all walks of life mingled, their conversations weaving a tapestry of ideas about aging not as decline but as transformation. Evelyn's panel was titled Reimagining Aging Through Technology and Lifelong Learning. When her turn came to speak, she took a deep breath and stepped to the podium. The room fell silent, expectant. She shared her journey candidly, the fear of being forgotten, the discovery of new purpose inspired by Elon Musk's fearless mindset, and the power of embracing the unknown to fuel personal and communal growth. She spoke of rockets and space exploration, not just as scientific endeavors but as metaphors for human potential at any age. Her words resonated deeply, drawing nods and smiles from the audience. After the talk, a lively discussion ensued. Evelyn fielded questions with grace and humility, her experiences bridging the gap between theory and lived reality. She listened attentively as others shared stories of innovation, setbacks, and breakthroughs. The summit became a crucible of connection, fueling Evelyn's determination to continue breaking down barriers. In the days following the event, Evelyn was invited to join a coalition of advocates working to influence public policy on aging and technology. The coalition aimed to create programs that encouraged seniors to engage with STEM fields, promoted intergenerational mentorship, and dismantled stereotypes about aging. Evelyn accepted, realizing this was an opportunity to transform not just her own life but the lives of many others who felt overlooked or limited by society's expectations. Back home, Evelyn's community projects took on new momentum. The workshops expanded to include coding classes and robotics clubs, drawing participants of all ages. Her blog evolved into a platform amplifying voices from diverse backgrounds, weaving narratives of challenge and triumph. The ripple effect of her work reached local schools, senior centers, and even businesses looking to foster more inclusive cultures. Yet with progress came challenges. Not everyone welcomed change. Some neighbors and family members voiced skepticism or dismissed her initiatives as too ambitious or not for people like us. Evelyn faced moments of frustration and self-doubt but drew strength from the very community she had built and from Elon Musk's example of relentless perseverance. She reminded herself that every breakthrough required pushing through resistance and uncertainty. One afternoon, Evelyn received a call from her daughter, Anna. Their relationship, once strained and distant, had been healing slowly but unevenly. Anna's voice trembled as she shared concerns about her own fears of aging and obsolescence in a rapidly changing world. Evelyn listened with compassion, offering encouragement rooted in her own journey. They talked long into the evening, bridging gaps with honesty and love. That night, Evelyn realized that crossing thresholds wasn't just about public achievements, it was about the intimate, sometimes messy work of connection and healing. She thought about Elon Musk's ventures, how every launch, every prototype failure, was followed by recalibration and renewed effort. Life was no different. As winter approached, Evelyn embraced the season of reflection and renewal. She spent quiet evenings by the fire, reading letters from workshop participants and messages from blog readers who found hope in her story. Each note was a testament to the power of one person's courage to inspire many. The cold outside contrasted with the warmth blossoming within her community and herself. Evelyn also began mentoring a young woman named Maya, a recent college graduate passionate about space sciences but overwhelmed by the challenges ahead. Their weekly meetings became a blend of technical learning, life coaching, and mutual inspiration. Evelyn saw in Maya the same spark she once had, reminding her of the timeless nature of curiosity and the importance of passing knowledge forward. Together, they dreamed of projects that could combine experience and innovation, senior wisdom and youthful energy. One evening, as snowflakes drifted softly outside her window, Evelyn penned a new blog post titled, Crossing Thresholds, The Power of Saying Yes. She wrote about the fears she had overcome, the moments she had stepped into the unknown, and the infinite possibilities that awaited those willing to take the leap. Her words were a rallying cry to her readers: the most profound growth comes when we dare to cross the thresholds that frighten us. Age is not a wall but a door, waiting to be opened with courage and hope. The post resonated deeply, sparking conversations and reflections across her community and beyond. Evelyn realized her story had become more than personal transformation, it was a movement encouraging others to embrace change fearlessly. As the new year approached, Evelyn stood once again beneath the vast night sky. The stars twinkled like distant beacons, reminders of the infinite horizon still waiting to be explored. She thought of the rockets launching toward Mars, of the young engineers and dreamers she had met, of the community she had helped build. More than anything, she understood that crossing thresholds was an ongoing journey, a continuous invitation to grow, connect, and redefine what it meant to live fully at any age. Evelyn smiled, her heart steady and hopeful. The thresholds she crossed were not ends but beginnings. And with each step forward, she carried a spark that could ignite a universe. Evelyn sat in the bustling community center, the hum of conversation weaving around her like a familiar melody. The space was alive with activity, children gathered around tables assembling small rockets, seniors sharing stories of their own journeys, and volunteers moving gracefully between groups offering guidance and encouragement. It was the heart of everything Evelyn had worked for, a living, breathing testament to the power of connection. As she moved among the groups, her eyes caught the spark of curiosity lighting up faces young and old. She thought back to the days when her own world felt small and isolating, when the silence of loneliness threatened to swallow her spirit. Now, she was surrounded by a community united by a shared passion for learning, exploration, and growth. It was more than just workshops or blogs, it was a network of relationships weaving a safety net of hope and possibility. Evelyn's own transformation had been fueled not only by inspiration but by the people who believed in her, challenged her, and walked alongside her. Elon Musk's daring ventures into the unknown had symbolized that fearless mindset, but it was the connections she forged in her own life that gave her the strength to keep moving forward. The day's workshop focused on storytelling, encouraging participants to share their personal experiences of overcoming fear and embracing change. Evelyn facilitated a circle where voices rose and fell in a rhythm of vulnerability and courage. One by one, people shared their stories: a retired teacher who had started a community garden, a veteran learning to use social media to reconnect with old friends, a young girl dreaming of becoming an astronaut despite doubts from her family. Each story was a thread, weaving a tapestry of resilience and hope. Evelyn noticed a quiet man sitting near the back, his eyes moist with emotion as he listened. After the session, he approached her, introducing himself as George, a widower who had recently moved to town. He shared how the workshops had given him a renewed sense of purpose and belonging. For the first time in years, he felt seen and valued. Evelyn felt a deep warmth in her chest. This was the essence of what she had sought, not just change for herself but transformation in others. The power of connection was a force that transcended age, circumstance, and fear. Over the next weeks, Evelyn and George developed a friendship rooted in mutual support and shared passion. George brought fresh energy to the workshops, helping organize events and mentoring younger participants. In turn, Evelyn found in him a steady companion who reminded her that growth was a lifelong journey, and that sometimes the greatest courage was in opening one's heart to others. Their bond became a beacon within the community, inspiring others to reach out, build bridges, and break down barriers. Evelyn's blog began featuring stories of connection, tales of friendship blossoming across generations, of families healing through shared learning, of individuals discovering that they were never truly alone. The response was overwhelming. Messages flooded in from readers who found comfort and inspiration in these narratives. Some wrote of rekindled relationships with children and grandchildren, others of newfound friendships sparked by a shared hobby or a chance encounter. One message stood out, a letter from a woman named Sarah who lived hundreds of miles away. Sarah wrote of feeling invisible and forgotten in her small town until she stumbled upon Evelyn's blog. Inspired, she started her own community group focused on lifelong learning and shared purpose. Sarah's letter was a reminder that connection was not confined by geography, it was a ripple spreading outward, touching lives in unexpected places. Encouraged by this, Evelyn began organizing virtual meetups, creating spaces where people from across the country could gather, share, and support one another. These online gatherings blossomed into a vibrant community where age, background, and location melted away, leaving only the shared human desire to grow and belong. One evening, during a particularly lively virtual session, Evelyn noticed a familiar name pop up in the chat, Anna, her daughter. They hadn't spoken much in recent months, their relationship still fragile but healing. Evelyn's heart leapt. Anna typed a message, "Thank you for reminding me I'm not alone. I'm proud of you, Mom." Tears blurred Evelyn's vision as she typed back, "I'm proud of you too. Let's keep building bridges together." That moment crystallized everything Evelyn had learned about connection, that it was both the foundation and the fuel for transformation. It was the light that could dispel even the deepest shadows of loneliness and doubt. Inspired by these experiences, Evelyn expanded her outreach efforts. She partnered with local schools to create intergenerational programs where students and seniors collaborated on science projects, storytelling, and community service. These programs fostered empathy, respect, and shared purpose, breaking down stereotypes and creating lasting bonds. In one such program, Evelyn watched a group of teenagers patiently teaching a workshop participant how to use a tablet for the first time. The laughter and learning that filled the room echoed with the promise of new beginnings. Evelyn's own sense of purpose deepened as she witnessed the impact of these connections on individuals and the community at large. The journey that had begun with personal doubt and fear had blossomed into a collective movement of empowerment and hope. Yet, Evelyn knew that the path of connection was not without its challenges. She encountered moments when old wounds surfaced, reluctance, misunderstanding, and the pain of relationships strained by time and silence. But each challenge became an opportunity to practice patience, forgiveness, and authenticity. Evelyn remembered Elon Musk's insistence on embracing failure as part of the process. She realized that building meaningful connections required the same courage, to be vulnerable, to listen deeply, and to keep reaching out even when the outcome was uncertain. One particularly poignant moment came when Evelyn hosted a community memorial for a beloved member who had recently passed away. The event brought together people across generations, sharing memories, stories, and tears. Evelyn spoke about the power of legacy, not just in what we leave behind materially, but in the connections we nurture and the lives we touch. She saw how the threads of community wove strength and comfort even in grief. As spring blossomed into full bloom, Evelyn found herself reflecting on the seasons of her life. She thought about the winter of isolation, the spring of awakening, and the summer of connection that now defined her days. The power of connection was no longer an abstract concept but a living reality, a force that had transformed not only her own life but the lives of countless others. Under the vast expanse of a starlit sky, Evelyn felt the universe's vastness mirror the endless potential of human connection. Each relationship, each shared story, each act of kindness was a star in the constellation of community and hope. She whispered a quiet gratitude for the journey that had brought her here and for the spark that had ignited the flame, a spark inspired by fearlessness, curiosity, and the unwavering belief that it's never too late to change. The power of connection had become her legacy, a light to guide others through their own journeys. And as she looked to the future, Evelyn knew that this flame would continue to grow, fueled by the hearts and hands of those willing to reach out and say, "You matter. You belong. Together, we can soar." Evelyn stood on the porch of her modest home, the evening sun casting long shadows across the quiet street. The air was tinged with the scent of freshly fallen leaves and the distant hum of life winding down for the day. She breathed deeply, feeling the weight of the years yet the buoyancy of a spirit renewed. Building bridges, it was more than a metaphor now. It was a mission, a way of life that she had embraced with every fiber of her being. The bridge she thought of first wasn't made of steel or concrete but of understanding, compassion, and shared purpose. It spanned the divide between generations, fears, and old wounds, connecting people who might otherwise remain isolated on opposite shores. Evelyn's journey had taught her that bridges could be fragile or strong, temporary or lasting, but they were always built one plank at a time, through small acts of courage and kindness. The community center was alive again, bustling with activity that pulsed like a heartbeat. Evelyn had organized a new initiative, Bridges of Tomorrow, designed to pair seniors with local youth in collaborative projects combining technology, storytelling, and service. The goal was simple yet profound, to create spaces where differences melted away and mutual respect flourished. As Evelyn watched a group of teenagers helping a group of seniors build a model rocket, their laughter and focus blending into a symphony of connection, she felt the thrill of witnessing transformation unfold. The young faces brimmed with curiosity and patience, while the older faces shone with pride and renewed purpose. It was a tangible bridge between past and future. Yet, building bridges wasn't always seamless. Evelyn knew that fear and misunderstanding lurked beneath the surface, waiting to undo progress. She remembered her own hesitations, the doubts about whether the young would listen, whether the old could learn new ways, whether the divides could truly be crossed. But each challenge became a chance to try again, to listen deeper, and to lead with empathy. One afternoon, a tense moment arose during a workshop when a disagreement flared between a teenager frustrated by slow progress and an elderly participant wary of new technology. The room quieted, the air thick with unspoken frustration. Evelyn stepped in, gently guiding the conversation toward understanding rather than conflict. She shared a story of her own moments of doubt, drawing parallels to Elon Musk's relentless iterations despite failures and setbacks. The room softened, the tension dissolving into renewed collaboration. It was a reminder that bridges needed maintenance, patience, communication, and the willingness to meet halfway. Outside the community center, Evelyn reached out to local leaders and organizations to expand the reach of Bridges of Tomorrow. She met with school principals, senior housing coordinators, and nonprofit directors, sharing her vision and inviting partnerships. Some were enthusiastic, seeing the potential for community revitalization, others were skeptical, bound by bureaucratic inertia or budget constraints. Evelyn learned to navigate these challenges with persistence and adaptability, crafting proposals that highlighted the program's benefits and aligned with broader goals. Slowly but surely, bridges began to form between institutions as well as individuals. One of the most rewarding developments came when a local tech company offered to sponsor a coding lab for seniors, staffed by enthusiastic employees eager to give back. Evelyn helped design a curriculum that paired coding lessons with storytelling projects, allowing participants to create digital narratives about their lives and dreams. The lab became a hub of creativity and learning, breaking down stereotypes about both age and technology. Evelyn's relationship with her daughter, Anna, continued to deepen. They collaborated on a video series highlighting stories from the Bridges of Tomorrow program, blending Anna's media skills with Evelyn's wisdom and passion. Their joint work became a symbol of healing and partnership, proof that even the most strained relationships could be rebuilt with effort and love. One day, as Evelyn and Anna reviewed footage of a workshop where children and seniors painted a mural depicting rockets soaring through the cosmos, Evelyn felt a surge of hope. The mural was more than art, it was a testament to what could be achieved when bridges were built with intention and heart. At home, Evelyn's writing reflected this new chapter. Her blog posts explored themes of reconciliation, collaboration, and the power of community to transcend divisions. She shared stories of unexpected friendships, breakthrough moments, and the quiet victories of everyday connection. Her readers responded with gratitude and enthusiasm, many inspired to start their own bridge-building projects. The wider world was beginning to take notice. Invitations arrived for Evelyn to speak at conferences, participate in panels, and advise on community engagement initiatives. With each opportunity, she carried her message with clarity and passion, that the future belonged to those who could build bridges strong enough to carry hope across divides. Yet, amidst the momentum, Evelyn remained grounded in the simple truths that had guided her journey. She cherished the moments of quiet connection, the shared smiles during a workshop, the hand extended in support, the story told and received with open hearts. These were the planks that made her bridges real and lasting. One evening, as she sat on her porch watching the stars emerge, Evelyn reflected on the cosmic connections she had come to understand. The same principles that guided rockets through space, precision, resilience, collaboration, also guided human relationships. Elon Musk's vision had shown her that daring to reach for the stars required a foundation of strong connections and unwavering belief. Building bridges was not a solitary endeavor but a collective one, where every voice mattered and every hand contributed. As the moon rose high, casting a silver glow over the quiet street, Evelyn felt a profound sense of peace. The bridges she had built and was building were more than physical or social structures, they were lifelines of hope, pathways to understanding, and testaments to the enduring human spirit. She knew the journey was ongoing, filled with challenges and triumphs alike. But with each bridge constructed, the world became a little smaller, a little kinder, and a little more like the boundless universe she had come to love. And in that truth, Evelyn found her greatest legacy, a legacy not measured by accolades or achievements, but by the lives touched and the connections forged across time, space, and hearts. The chill of early spring hung in the air as Evelyn walked slowly along the familiar path through the town park. The budding trees reached skyward, promising new life, but inside, a tempest of doubt churned beneath her calm exterior. Despite the momentum of her work, the growing community, and the ripples of hope she'd helped create, Evelyn found herself grappling with old fears that had once nearly silenced her. Was she truly making a difference? Did her efforts really matter in a world so vast and complicated? The question lingered like a shadow, persistent and unsettling. She remembered the countless nights spent wrestling with the voice inside her head that whispered, "You're too old. You're too tired. This is too big." Those doubts had nearly stopped her before, but now they gnawed at her in new forms: fear of burnout, fear of rejection, fear that the world's pace would leave her behind again. Sitting on a bench overlooking the small lake, Evelyn let her thoughts drift. The water mirrored the sky, sometimes calm, sometimes stormy, just like her emotions. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through messages from her blog readers and community members. Their stories of courage and transformation were a balm, yet even those voices couldn't fully quiet the uncertainties within. One message caught her eye, a quote attributed to Elon Musk: "When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor." The word struck a chord, reminding her that doubt was part of the journey, not a signal to stop. Inspired but still weighed down, Evelyn reached out to George, her steadfast friend and fellow believer. Their conversation was a lifeline. George shared his own struggles with fear and insecurity, reminding her that no meaningful change came without discomfort. Together, they reflected on how doubt was not a failure but an invitation to deepen resilience and clarity. Encouraged, Evelyn decided to lean into her fears rather than avoid them. She wrote a new blog post titled, "Doubt as a Compass," sharing her vulnerability and encouraging others to see uncertainty as a natural part of growth. The response was immediate and heartfelt. Readers from across the country sent messages sharing their own battles with doubt and how Evelyn's honesty gave them strength. One woman wrote, "I thought I was alone and feeling lost at this stage of life. Your words remind me to keep going." The exchange of courage sparked a wave of renewed energy within Evelyn. She realized that facing doubts openly could be a bridge, connecting hearts and empowering transformation. Yet doubt wasn't the only challenge. The outside world tested her resolve in ways she hadn't anticipated. Some community members questioned the direction of the programs, worried about sustainability or wary of change. Others expressed frustration with the pace of progress or the involvement of younger generations. Evelyn met these concerns with listening and empathy, holding space for differing perspectives while gently guiding conversations toward shared goals. It was a delicate dance, balancing hope and realism, ambition and patience. At times, Evelyn felt the pull to retreat, to protect herself from criticism or exhaustion. But she recalled the stories of Elon Musk's failures: rockets exploding, projects delayed, harsh skepticism, and how his refusal to quit had propelled him forward. She reminded herself that the path of transformation was never linear. There were setbacks, recalibrations, and moments of doubt that tested the very core of one's commitment. Evelyn's family dynamics also stirred old doubts. Anna, though more connected than before, still struggled with her own fears about the future and the shadows of past misunderstandings. Their conversations sometimes faltered, revealing gaps in trust and communication. Evelyn worked hard to bridge those gaps with patience and openness, understanding that healing was a process, not an event. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult phone call, Evelyn sat quietly, reflecting on how doubt had shaped her life. She thought about the moment years ago when she first encountered Elon Musk's ideas, a spark that challenged everything she believed about aging and possibility. That spark had ignited a fire that carried her through fear and uncertainty. Now, as doubts resurfaced, she saw them not as enemies but as old friends, reminders to pause, reflect, and renew her commitment. With renewed clarity, Evelyn embraced a new approach. She began incorporating mindfulness and reflective practices into her daily routine, carving out moments of stillness amid the busyness. She found strength in small rituals, morning walks, journaling, quiet evenings under the stars, that grounded her and helped quiet the noise of doubt. These practices deepened her resilience and sharpened her focus on what truly mattered. Inspired by this inner work, Evelyn introduced mindfulness sessions into her community programs, inviting participants to explore self-awareness and emotional balance. The sessions became a cherished part of the offerings, fostering deeper connection and compassion. Evelyn watched as people who once felt overwhelmed by fear found new tools to navigate uncertainty with grace. Through it all, Evelyn learned that facing doubts wasn't about eradicating fear but about embracing it as part of the human experience. It was about stepping forward despite uncertainty, fueled by purpose and the knowledge that every step mattered. The journey was not about perfection but about courage, the courage to rise after falling, to speak when silence seemed safer, and to keep building bridges even when the way forward was unclear. One evening, as Evelyn gazed up at the stars, she felt a profound sense of peace. The vastness of the cosmos was a reminder that doubt, like the darkness of space, was a canvas for light and possibility. She whispered a quiet vow to herself, to keep moving forward, fueled not by certainty but by hope and courage. And in that promise, Evelyn found the strength to face the doubts, and to keep dreaming, building, and connecting with an open heart. The morning light filtered softly through the lace curtains as Evelyn sipped her coffee, the warmth grounding her in the quiet stillness before the day's bustle began. Change, it had been the unwelcome visitor for so many years, a force that whispered fears and doubts in her ear. But now, it felt different. Change was no longer a threat but a gateway, a chance to grow, to reinvent, to rediscover purpose. The journey had been long and winding, filled with moments when the past threatened to pull her back and the future loomed uncertain. Yet, Evelyn had learned that to embrace change was to embrace life itself, with all its unpredictability and promise. She thought about the small choices that had led her here, deciding to write her first blog post, reaching out to her daughter, opening the doors of the community center to new ideas and people. Each choice had required letting go of comfort, familiar routines, and the illusion of control. And each had brought unexpected rewards. The community center buzzed with energy that day, alive with preparations for a new program designed to help seniors adapt to rapidly evolving technology. Evelyn had partnered with a local university's innovation lab to bring experts who could teach everything from social media basics to virtual reality exploration. It was a leap into the unknown for many participants, but also an exciting adventure. Watching a group of seniors tentatively don VR headsets and then erupt into laughter as they visited distant places, Evelyn saw firsthand the transformative power of embracing change. She remembered a time not so long ago when the very idea of using such technology would have seemed impossible, even frightening. Now, it was a source of joy and connection. But embracing change wasn't just about technology. It was about mindset, learning to see setbacks as opportunities, fears as signals to grow, and endings as beginnings. Evelyn reflected on the lessons from Elon Musk's ventures, the relentless pursuit of innovation, the willingness to pivot after failure, the refusal to accept limitations imposed by age or circumstance. His example had become a beacon, guiding her through her own metamorphosis. At home, Evelyn's relationship with Anna continued to evolve. They shared moments of laughter and vulnerability, navigating the delicate dance of rebuilding trust and understanding. Anna confided her own fears about the future, the uncertainty of her career, the pressures of raising a family, the weight of expectations. Evelyn listened, offering empathy and encouragement rather than advice, recognizing that embracing change was a shared journey. Together, they began planning a collaborative project to document stories of resilience and transformation in their community. The process was both healing and inspiring, weaving threads of connection between generations. Yet, embracing change also required confronting loss. Evelyn thought often of the friends and loved ones who had passed, the chapters of her life that had closed. Grief was a companion she had learned to carry with grace, understanding that loss was part of the tapestry of change. One afternoon, while visiting a local art exhibit, Evelyn encountered a series of paintings depicting cycles of nature, seasons turning, flowers blooming and fading, rivers carving new paths. The artwork stirred something deep within her, a reminder that change was natural, inevitable, and beautiful. She shared this insight with her community during a workshop, inviting participants to explore their own stories of change through creative expression. The session was transformative, filled with tears, laughter, and revelations. Evelyn saw how embracing change allowed people to reclaim their power and rewrite their narratives. Outside the center, Evelyn faced resistance from some community members who clung to old ways, fearing that change threatened their identity or security. She met these fears with patience, opening dialogues that honored their concerns while gently encouraging openness to new possibilities. It was a delicate balance, respecting tradition while fostering growth. Through these conversations, Evelyn discovered that change was not a force to be feared but a dance to be learned, requiring listening, flexibility, and courage. Inspired by the growing momentum, Evelyn began to document the community's transformation through a video series, capturing moments of discovery, challenge, and triumph. The series resonated widely, touching hearts and sparking conversations far beyond their town. It was a testament to the power of storytelling in embracing change. One evening, as Evelyn walked home beneath a sky bursting with stars, she paused to gaze upward. The vast cosmos, with its endless mysteries and possibilities, mirrored the journey she was on. Change was not a destination but a continuum, a space where dreams could take flight and new paths could be forged. She whispered a quiet affirmation, "I am ready." In that readiness, Evelyn found freedom, the freedom to let go, to trust, and to soar into the unknown with an open heart. Embracing change had become her greatest act of courage and love. It was the promise of every new dawn, the spark that ignited hope in the face of uncertainty. And as she continued to build bridges, face doubts, and nurture connection, Evelyn knew that change was not the end but the beautiful beginning of a life fully lived. Evelyn sat at her kitchen table, the afternoon light casting a warm glow across scattered papers, a half-finished cup of tea forgotten beside her. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of a radio playing a news report about the latest SpaceX launch. She listened absently, the words stirring a familiar spark within her, a reminder of the daring spirit that had ignited her journey. Reaching out, whether to mend broken ties, build new friendships, or expand her community, had become a central theme in Evelyn's life. It was a concept that felt simple in theory but carried layers of vulnerability, courage, and hope. The phone beside her buzzed with messages from people she'd met through her community programs and blog, stories of gratitude, invitations to collaborate, and even a few requests for help from strangers seeking connection. Evelyn realized that reaching out was not a one-way street but a dynamic exchange, a bridge extending in both directions. Her own outreach began with a letter she wrote to an old friend, Samuel, whom she hadn't spoken to in over a decade. They had parted ways after a painful misunderstanding, the silence stretching across years like an unspoken chasm. Evelyn's hand trembled slightly as she penned the words, each sentence a step toward healing. I don't know if you'll read this or if it will matter, but I want you to know I've thought about you often and hope we can find a way back to friendship. The letter felt like a small lifeline tossed into the sea of time and regret. To her surprise, Samuel responded, his letter tinged with similar longing and tentative hope. Their correspondence blossomed slowly, filled with honesty, apologies, and memories of better days. Reaching out to Samuel became a metaphor for Evelyn, a reminder that it was never too late to rebuild bridges, no matter how broken they seemed. Within her community, Evelyn expanded her reach by inviting local veterans to join the Bridges of Tomorrow program. Many had felt invisible after their service, grappling with isolation and the challenge of reintegration. The workshops offered a space where their experiences were honored and their voices heard. One veteran, Frank, shared stories of resilience and loss, inspiring others to open up and connect. Evelyn saw firsthand how reaching out could create ripples of healing and belonging. She also reached beyond her town, partnering with a national nonprofit focused on senior empowerment. Together, they launched a pilot project connecting seniors with tech mentors across the country through virtual meetups. The program blossomed, shrinking distances and fostering friendships that transcended geography and generations. The digital realm, once intimidating to many participants, became a conduit for connection and growth. Evelyn's relationship with Anna deepened through this new phase of reaching out. They collaborated on interviews and storytelling projects, weaving narratives that celebrated strength and transformation. Anna's tech skills and Evelyn's wisdom created a powerful synergy, their work touching lives in ways neither had imagined. Yet, reaching out was not without its challenges. Some invitations were met with silence or rejection, stirring old fears of inadequacy and loneliness. Evelyn confronted these moments with grace, reminding herself that not every hand extended would be grasped, and that was part of the dance. She learned to hold space for disappointment without letting it define her. One particularly difficult outreach was to her younger sister, Karen, from whom she had been estranged for years. The wounds between them ran deep, old grievances, misunderstandings, and the pain of loss. Evelyn drafted and redrafted a heartfelt letter, laying bare her regrets and hopes for reconciliation. Sending it felt like stepping off a cliff, the unknown stretching beneath. Weeks passed with no response, and doubt crept in. But Evelyn held on to the belief that reaching out was an act of love, regardless of outcome. Eventually, Karen replied. Their initial conversations were fragile, but with time, they began to rebuild trust and understanding. Evelyn recognized that reaching out was a journey marked by patience, humility, and the willingness to be vulnerable. Inspired by these personal experiences, Evelyn organized a Reach Out Week at the community center, a series of events encouraging people to connect across divides, share stories, and practice acts of kindness. The initiative sparked a wave of participation, with neighbors helping each other, friendships forming between unlikely pairs, and a renewed sense of belonging spreading through the town. Evelyn felt a profound joy witnessing the transformation, how the simple act of reaching out could soften hearts and bridge loneliness. In one memorable moment, a shy teenager reached out to an elderly widow, offering companionship and tech support. Their unlikely friendship became a beacon of hope for others, a testament to the power of connection across generations. Evelyn's own life was enriched by the many hands she reached out to and the many that reached back. She understood now that no one was truly alone, and that every connection was a thread in the fabric of community and resilience. The space program updates continued to fuel her inspiration. Elon Musk's vision of reaching beyond Earth, of exploring new frontiers, mirrored her own mission, reaching beyond fear, isolation, and limitation to discover new possibilities. She often shared this parallel in her talks, inviting audiences to see their own lives as journeys of exploration and connection. One evening, as Evelyn prepared for a virtual panel discussion on senior empowerment and technology, she reflected on how far she had come. Reaching out had transformed her from a woman weighed down by regret and loneliness into a beacon of hope and action. The path hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every step. She closed her eyes and pictured the countless hands joined together, some worn and trembling, others youthful and eager, all reaching out to build a better world. And in that vision, Evelyn found her greatest strength. Persistence. The word echoed in Evelyn's mind as she stared at the half-finished prototype on her cluttered workbench. It was a modest device, a simple tool designed to help seniors navigate digital spaces more easily, but to her, it represented so much more. It symbolized the unyielding drive to keep going, even when the world whispered that it was too late, that the effort was futile, or that the dream was beyond reach. For years, Evelyn had wrestled with the temptation to give up, when fatigue set in, when doubts clouded her vision, or when setbacks piled up like insurmountable walls. But she had learned, slowly and painfully, that persistence was the key to breaking through those walls. She thought back to the stories of Elon Musk, his relentless work ethic, his refusal to accept failure as an endpoint. Rockets exploded, investors doubted, deadlines slipped, yet he kept pushing. His mindset wasn't about blind stubbornness but about a deeply rooted belief that persistence, paired with innovation, could transform impossibility into reality. Evelyn's journey mirrored that grit. She remembered the early days when her blog barely attracted any readers, when her community program struggled to find participants, when even Anna doubted the path. Each no and each moment of silence was a test of her persistence. But instead of retreating, she refined her approach, learned from mistakes, and sought new allies. The turning points had been small but crucial: publishing a story that resonated, organizing an event that sparked enthusiasm, receiving a heartfelt message from someone inspired to change. These moments fueled her forward. In her workshop, surrounded by sketches, notes, and bits of electronics, Evelyn felt the familiar pang of frustration. The prototype wasn't working as intended. A critical sensor malfunctioned, the user interface was clunky, and time was running short before the next community showcase. But instead of succumbing to despair, she leaned into persistence. She called her tech mentor, Jake, who patiently walked her through troubleshooting steps. They stayed on the phone for hours, testing and refining. The breakthrough came late one night, a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. The device responded smoothly, the sensor calibrated perfectly. Evelyn's heart swelled with quiet triumph. Persistence wasn't just about pushing through external obstacles, it was about cultivating inner strength, resilience, and patience. She practiced daily affirmations and mindfulness techniques to stay centered amid the chaos. She reminded herself that progress wasn't always linear, that setbacks were lessons in disguise, guiding her toward better solutions. At the community center, Evelyn shared her experiences with participants, using her own story to inspire persistence. She hosted a persistence circle, where people shared their challenges and celebrated small wins. The group became a source of mutual encouragement, a living testament to the power of never giving up. Frank, the veteran who had once struggled with isolation, spoke about how persistence helped him rebuild his life after injury and loss. Others shared stories of career reinvention, healing from grief, and overcoming health challenges. Evelyn realized that persistence was not just a personal virtue but a collective force, binding people together in shared determination. The broader community began to notice the ripple effects. Local businesses donated materials to support the prototype project, the university offered additional expertise, and volunteers stepped forward to help with testing and outreach. Evelyn's persistence had created a momentum that transcended her individual efforts. It was as if a tide had turned, lifting everyone forward. Meanwhile, her relationship with Anna continued to deepen. They worked side by side on the prototype, blending Evelyn's vision with Anna's technical skills. Their collaboration was a dance of ideas, frustration, breakthroughs, and laughter. Through persistence, they healed old wounds and forged a partnership rooted in mutual respect and shared purpose. One afternoon, as Evelyn prepared for a presentation at a national senior innovation conference, she reflected on how persistence had reshaped her life. The road had been arduous, marked by moments of doubt and fatigue, but each step had brought growth and connection. She felt a profound gratitude for the journey and the people who had walked it with her. The conference was a milestone, a chance to share her story and prototype with a wider audience. Standing before a room of innovators, seniors, and advocates, Evelyn spoke candidly about the challenges and rewards of persistence. She emphasized that age was not a barrier to innovation or change, but rather a wellspring of wisdom and resilience. The audience responded with standing ovations, affirmations, and heartfelt conversations afterward. Evelyn felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that persistence had opened doors not only for her but for many others. Back home, as she updated her blog late into the night, Evelyn received an unexpected email from a representative at SpaceX. They had come across her story and were intrigued by the parallels between her mission and their own ethos of persistence and innovation. The email was an invitation to collaborate on a community outreach project aimed at inspiring older adults to engage with science and technology. The opportunity felt surreal, a moment where persistence had led to an extraordinary connection. Evelyn shared the news with Anna, who beamed with pride and excitement. Together, they began brainstorming ways to integrate the SpaceX collaboration into their existing programs, imagining workshops, virtual tours, and mentorship opportunities. The prospect filled Evelyn with energy and hope. Persistence had not only kept her moving forward but had expanded her horizon in ways she had never imagined. As the weeks passed, the partnership took shape. Evelyn found herself engaging with engineers, educators, and fellow seniors passionate about breaking barriers and redefining aging. She marveled at how persistence could create unexpected pathways, weaving together dreams and realities. One evening, gazing out at the night sky, Evelyn felt a profound connection to the cosmos, the very realm Elon Musk sought to explore. She whispered a quiet thanks for the power of persistence, for the courage to keep reaching, building, and believing. In that moment, she knew that persistence was more than just a trait, it was a lifeline, a beacon lighting the way through darkness and uncertainty toward a future rich with possibility. And with that knowledge, Evelyn was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, steadfast and unyielding. Evelyn woke early, as she often did now, greeted by the gentle hum of morning birdsong filtering through her bedroom window. The day stretched before her, full of promise and possibilities that hadn't existed just months ago. Finding purpose, it was a concept she had wrestled with for decades, especially after retirement, when the world seemed to shrink and the question of, what now, loomed large and intimidating. For years, Evelyn had drifted through days filled with routine and quiet loneliness, haunted by the shadow of lost dreams and the ache of missed opportunities. But purpose, she was learning, wasn't a fixed destination but a living, breathing force that evolved with intention, courage, and connection. It began with a simple decision, to no longer be defined by age or circumstance but to actively seek meaning in every moment. Inspired by the lessons from Elon Musk, who had repeatedly pursued audacious goals regardless of skepticism or failure, Evelyn began to explore what truly ignited her spirit. She revisited passions long tucked away, writing, storytelling, and community engagement. The blog she started had blossomed into a platform for sharing stories of resilience, innovation, and transformation, drawing readers from across the country and even internationally. Each message of thanks, each shared experience, was a thread weaving a tapestry of purpose that strengthened Evelyn's resolve. At the community center, Evelyn took on a new role as mentor and advocate, guiding others through their own journeys of rediscovery. She launched a series called Purpose Pathways, workshops designed to help seniors identify passions, set goals, and connect with resources. The program attracted diverse participants, former teachers rekindling their love for education, veterans discovering art therapy, caregivers finding new ways to give back. Evelyn watched as eyes brightened, shoulders straightened, and voices grew confident. The process of finding purpose was deeply personal yet shared, a dance of introspection and outreach. She often quoted Elon Musk's belief that purpose must be greater than oneself, a driving force that inspires and sustains through adversity. For Evelyn, that purpose was now clear. To empower others to embrace their own potential and redefine what it meant to age. The relationship with her daughter Anna flourished as they collaborated on purpose-driven projects. Together, they created multimedia stories highlighting seniors who had reinvented themselves, breaking stereotypes and building bridges across generations. These stories sparked conversations and inspired action, touching lives far beyond their small town. Evelyn found joy not only in the outcomes but in the process, the connections, the learning, the shared humanity. Yet, finding purpose was not without its challenges. Evelyn confronted doubts that still surfaced in quiet moments, the fear of insignificance, the weight of past regrets, the physical limitations that sometimes slowed her down. But she met these doubts with compassion and a renewed commitment to focus on what she could contribute rather than what she had lost. She practiced gratitude daily, recognizing the gifts of wisdom, experience, and resilience that only a long life could provide. One pivotal moment came during a community event honoring local heroes. Evelyn was invited to speak about her journey and the power of finding purpose later in life. Standing before a packed room, she shared her story candidly, the fears, the setbacks, the moments of breakthrough. She spoke of Elon Musk's example, the relentless pursuit of bold dreams, and the courage to redefine limits. Her words resonated deeply, moving many to tears and sparking applause that lingered long after she left the stage. Afterwards, a woman approached Evelyn with tears in her eyes, sharing how she had felt invisible and purposeless since her husband's death but now felt inspired to start volunteering again. It was a moment of profound connection and affirmation. Purpose was not a solitary quest but a ripple that expanded through community and compassion. Inspired by these encounters, Evelyn expanded her reach, partnering with local schools to create intergenerational programs that paired seniors with students in creative projects. The initiative bridged gaps of age and experience, fostering empathy and mutual learning. Evelyn marveled at the energy and insights that flowed between generations, a living testament to the power of purpose to unite and uplift. Meanwhile, Evelyn's own purpose evolved as she embraced new challenges and opportunities. She applied for a grant to develop a senior tech mentorship program, aiming to equip older adults with skills and confidence to navigate the digital world. The proposal was accepted, and with a team of passionate volunteers, Evelyn launched the initiative to enthusiastic response. The program became a beacon of empowerment, helping participants connect with family, access services, and explore new interests. Through these efforts, Evelyn felt her purpose deepen and expand. No longer a solitary quest but a shared mission to transform lives and communities. Late one evening, as she reviewed plans for an upcoming conference on aging and innovation, Evelyn paused to reflect on the journey that had brought her here. Finding purpose had not erased the struggles or losses but had infused them with meaning and hope. It had given her a reason to rise each morning, a compass to navigate uncertainty, and a voice to inspire others. She felt a profound gratitude for the chance to rewrite her story, to live fully and fiercely, and to leave a legacy of courage and compassion. As she looked out at the stars twinkling in the night sky, Evelyn whispered a quiet affirmation: "Purpose is my path, my power, my promise." And in that moment, she knew she had truly found it, a purpose that transcended age, fear, and limitation, lighting the way to a future rich with possibility and connection. Change had never been Evelyn's closest friend. For much of her life, it had felt like an uninvited guest, disrupting routines, unsettling the familiar, and stirring fears she wasn't sure she could face. But as the years unfolded, she came to realize that change was not just inevitable, it was essential. Embracing change meant opening herself to transformation, to growth, and to the unknown possibilities that lay beyond the horizon. It was a lesson she learned not just through reflection but through experience, sometimes challenging, sometimes exhilarating. The first major shift came with retirement, a turning point that shook the foundations of Evelyn's identity. She went from a busy professional to a woman grappling with empty hours and a sense of lost purpose. The quiet that followed retirement was both a relief and a void, a space that forced her to confront questions she had long avoided. Who was she without her career? What was next? The answers were elusive, and for a time, Evelyn resisted change, clinging to old patterns and familiar comforts. But the spark came unexpectedly, through Elon Musk's bold vision of pushing boundaries, of embracing disruption as a catalyst for innovation. She saw in his journey a metaphor for life itself, a call to welcome change rather than fear it. Inspired, Evelyn began to experiment with new ways of living. She took classes she never imagined attending, digital literacy workshops, creative writing groups, community organizing seminars. Each new experience was a small act of embracing change, a step beyond comfort zones that once felt impenetrable. The process was not without discomfort. There were moments of frustration when technology overwhelmed her, when her body resisted new activities, and when self-doubt whispered that she was too old or too slow. But with each challenge, Evelyn cultivated patience and resilience, learning that change required kindness toward herself and a willingness to persevere. At the community center, Evelyn became a champion of change, encouraging others to see transformation as a source of empowerment rather than loss. She shared stories of seniors who had reinvented themselves, from artists discovering new mediums to entrepreneurs launching businesses in their 70s. These examples lit fires of possibility in the hearts of those around her. The Change Circle she initiated became a safe space for people to explore fears and hopes, to share successes and setbacks. It was a place where the inevitability of change was acknowledged and celebrated. One memorable participant was Harold, a retired mechanic who had resisted digital tools but, with encouragement, learned to use a tablet to connect with family and pursue a new hobby in photography. His journey was a powerful reminder that change was a process, not an event, and that the capacity to adapt was within reach for all. Evelyn's partnership with Anna deepened their mutual embrace of change. Together, they tackled projects that blended tradition with innovation, creating digital archives of local history, producing podcasts featuring senior voices, and developing tech tutorials designed for older learners. Their collaboration was a testament to how change could bridge generations, weaving new narratives that honored the past while imagining the future. The personal changes in Evelyn's life were mirrored by broader shifts in her community. The town began to welcome innovation, with new programs, businesses, and initiatives that reflected a commitment to inclusivity and growth. Evelyn took pride in knowing she had played a role in fostering this culture of openness. Yet, embracing change was also deeply emotional. Evelyn confronted grief for what had been lost, the passing of old friends, the fading of physical abilities, the closing of chapters that once defined her. She learned to hold these losses gently, recognizing that honoring the past was not a barrier to change but a foundation for it. In quiet moments, she practiced mindfulness and reflection, grounding herself in the present and opening to the possibilities ahead. One evening, as she prepared for a talk on resilience and transformation, Evelyn reflected on how far she had come. Change, once a source of fear, had become a source of strength and inspiration. She spoke to the audience about the importance of embracing uncertainty, of seeing each new day as an opportunity to grow, learn, and connect. Her words resonated deeply, moving many to tears and sparking renewed courage. After the event, a woman approached Evelyn with a smile, sharing how she had been paralyzed by fear of change but now felt ready to take small steps toward a new chapter. The exchange filled Evelyn with gratitude and purpose. The days that followed were marked by new initiatives, a senior tech lab, a community garden project, and a storytelling series that captured the evolving lives of local residents. Each project embodied the spirit of change embraced with openness and hope. Evelyn often thought back to Elon Musk's words about innovation and disruption, recognizing that the same principles applied to personal growth. Change was not a threat but an invitation, to dream bigger, to act bolder, to live fuller. As the seasons shifted outside her window, Evelyn felt herself transforming too, becoming a woman who welcomed change with curiosity and courage. She knew challenges would come, but so would opportunities. And with each step forward, she was rewriting the narrative of aging, not as decline, but as a time of renewal and possibility. One crisp morning, Evelyn stood before a group of young and old, sharing her journey and inviting them to embrace their own changes. She spoke of fear and hope, loss and growth, endings and beginnings. Her voice was steady, her eyes bright with conviction. Change is the path to our most vibrant selves, she said. It is never too late to open the door to something new. The room erupted in applause, a chorus of affirmation and shared commitment. Later that day, Evelyn returned home feeling a deep sense of peace. Embracing change had become her anthem, her gift to herself and her community. She knew the journey was ongoing, filled with twists and turns, but also with beauty and grace. As she looked out at the horizon, she whispered a promise, to continue welcoming change with an open heart, to keep learning and growing, and to inspire others to do the same. In that moment, Evelyn understood that embracing change was not just about adapting to life's circumstances but about choosing to live fully, fiercely, and without regret. It was the key to a new chapter rich with promise, connection, and joy. And she was ready. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?